All right, hey, Rising Church, welcome back. We finally made it. We made it to the very end of our series here in Revelation. We finished this past Sunday, and now here in our growth, we're kind of coming to the very end. I don't know if you're excited about that or if you're just like, relieved. But hopefully throughout this whole series on Sunday mornings, as well as in our groves, you've really had the chance to kind of unpack Revelation a little bit and maybe kind of overcome some of the stereotypes or some of the insecurities that you may have had about this book. And hopefully you've given yourself permission, as we've been saying literally like week in and week out, that there is going to be some mystery when it comes to God, when it comes to our faith, and especially when it comes to the end times, that nobody can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. It's just not possible for us to expect that our ways are going to be his ways and our thoughts are going to be his thoughts, from Isaiah. And so hopefully it's been insightful, though, and it's giving you some food for thought. As we come to the end, you're probably maybe scratching your head going, well, hey, Aaron, we're at the very end and we haven't talked about a couple of things that are like big key words when people talk about Revelation, when they talk about the end times. We've talked about, Armageddon. We talked about stuff like that. We've even mentioned a little bit the Antichrist and the false prophet and kind of some of these things. But there's a couple of key words that we're missing that we haven't even mentioned at all. And so maybe you're like, well, what gives with that? What's up with that, Aaron? And so today we're going to be talking briefly about two of those. The first one is the rapture, which I'm sure you've all heard about. And the second is what's called the millennium. Not the Millennium Falcon, but the original millennium. And so what are these two things about that we've all heard about? It's kind of part of the mythology or whatever you may say when it comes to the end times. And so why have we not really dug into those two? And let me give you the reason why, and then we'll kind of talk about how they play into Revelation. Really, I'll be honest with you, the reason we haven't really talked about it is because I would call them a disputable matter. These two things are things that people have argued about, theorized about, all kinds of different interpretations. And at the end of the day, to be honest with you, you could look at all these different things and you have to go, well, we're not really sure. It's not really crystal clear. It's not clear cut. There's ideas of it, but it's not really so fleshed out and so clear that we should really just this is what it says, because it doesn't say. And so I love what Paul says actually in Romans chapter 14. He says, hey, don't quarrel. He's like, accept those whose faith is weaker than yours or maybe different than yours, in the sense that he says, don't quarrel over disputable matters. And so don't fight, don't divide, don't just I'm not talking to that person over things that are disputable. Why would you do that? Over things that are indisputable, maybe do it for that, but not for things that are disputable. So if it's, hey, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. Jesus is the resurrection and the life. Jesus is the only way to the Father. That's an indisputable fact. That is what Scripture teaches across the board. But when it comes to things like the rapture or the millennium, it's disputable. And that's why we dispute over these things, and that's why churches divide over these things, and that's why people kind of polarize over these things. And it's but why? Why are we doing this on something that is clearly a disputable, not clear item? And so let me talk about the rapture for a second, because when I was growing up in church, I talked about, the movies that I would see that we show in youth group, and the very first one was A Thief in the Night. And it actually opened, I'm not even kidding, it opened, I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly, it opened with these Christians having their heads chopped off, the guillotine coming down, and and that's how the movie starts. You're what's going on? A Thief in the Night. And so for us, growing up back in the 80s, the rapture was huge. It was rapture, rapture, rapture. Everybody was talking about the rapture and oh, I can't wait for the rapture, and no need to freak out about the end times because we won't be here, because God's going to rapture us up. And so we'll be delivered out of the tribulation. We won't have to face all this nonsense with the Antichrist and the beast and the tribulation and all. We'll be gone. There'll be people that will become believers and followers of Jesus during that period, the tribulation. And we hear about those may be the 144,000 who come to faith in Jesus during that time, or whatever that number, again, we talked about before, may mean, but we don't know. And so that's kind of the idea, was the rapture was this kind of way out of this whole thing. And probably the main scripture that is usually tossed out on that one is not even in Revelation. It's in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verses 13 through 16. And so basically the whole context of it is he's talking about believers who have died. And the believers in Thessalonica are kind of freaking out, because they're well, what about those people who are already dead? Those who believed in Jesus and they died, are they going to be resurrected? What's going to happen with them? And so Paul addresses them. He says in verse 13, brothers and sisters, we do not want you to be uninformed about those who sleep in death, so that you do not grieve like the rest of mankind who have no hope. The rest of mankind, they have no hope. They have no security. They have no peace about what lies on the other side of death. So it's like, that should not be you. You don't need to freak out about death in that sense, because you're not uninformed. I don't want you to be uninformed and clueless. I want you to understand what's going on. So in verse 14, for we believe that Jesus died and rose again, and so we believe that God will bring with Jesus those who have fallen asleep in him, those who have passed away, who have perished, who have died physically. According to the Lord's word, we tell you that we who are still alive, who are not dead yet, who are left until the coming of the Lord, the second coming of the Lord, will certainly not precede those who have fallen asleep, those who have already passed away. For the Lord himself will come down from heaven with a loud command, with the voice of the archangel, with the trumpet call of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. And after that, all of us who are still alive and are left will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so we will be with the Lord forever. Encourage each other with these words. That's where we get this whole idea of rapture. The word rapture isn't even in the Bible. We get it from this idea of we'll be caught up, like we'll be snatched up, we'll be, plucked up with those who have perished. They'll go first, and then those who are still alive, we're up with them, and we'll meet the Lord in the air. And so that's the main verse. That's the main verse from where we get it. You get, maybe in Revelation, you might get one little tidbit of it. And when he's talking to the 7 churches, he talks about Philadelphia, which we talked about. That's the good one. And he says, hey, maybe, I'll keep you from this hour that is coming. And so maybe that's the idea again. But it's just not clear. It's not crystal clear. It's not clear cut. And so why divide over these things? In fact, to be honest with you, the whole theology of the rapture is pretty new. That's only something that's been taught across the board in the last couple hundred years. So we're talking like 1,500, 1,600, 1,700 years. It wasn't even like something that people talked about, because they didn't really understand. They didn't really theorize about it because nobody believed it, or maybe a few. But it kind of rose into prominence later. So that should already be a clue. Well, what happened to the church? Like, we've kind of gotten soft, and I don't want to be here during all this stuff. And the truth is, I don't want to be here during all this stuff. So I'll take a rapture. I would love to believe in the rapture. And then you have people dispute over, well, does it happen pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib? Disputable matters. So why argue over these things? Is it going to happen? I don't know. I hope so. But do we know for sure? No, we don't. Another one, the millennium, which is what we're going to read about today, which is in Revelation chapter 20. And Revelation chapter 20, it's called the 1,000 years. That's the title of it. It's the millennium. And it's kind of like after all the stuff we've talked about, after the beast and the Antichrist and Babylon and all these things, after Armageddon and the nations of the world, they gather, the generals and the kings, they gather together to wage war against the Lamb. And they're cursing God and all this stuff. And God, with a word, wipes them all out. This is what happens next. And I'm just going to read a little bit of it, but it says in chapter 20, verse 1, and I saw an angel coming down out of heaven, having the key to the abyss, we talked about that, and holding in his hand a great chain. He seized the dragon, that ancient serpent who is the devil, or Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. He threw him into the abyss and locked and sealed it over him to keep him from deceiving the nations any more until the 1,000 years were ended. After that, he must be set free for a short time. And then it talks about the resurrection of those who passed away during the tribulation. And it talks about, actually, this is where that beheaded part comes from, because it actually says that. And I saw the souls of those who had been beheaded because of their testimony about Jesus and because of the word of God. They did not worship the beast or its image. They did not receive the mark on his foreheads or their heads. They came to life and they reigned with Christ for 1,000 years. So what's the 1,000 years? What's the millennium? This is the only chapter in the Bible, and actually the only 2 paragraphs in the Bible that even refer to this millennium thing. So what is it? And that's kind of the question. What is it? There's all kinds of different interpretations. Again, there's different theories, there's different schools and peoples, divided over this thing. And so some people, they believe, well, you probably heard of premillennial, amillennial, or postmillennial. Premillennialists believe that there's a literal 1,000 years and it's to come in the future, and this will be literally 1,000 years. You got people who are amillennialists who believe we're kind of in it. It's kind of more representative. It's the present church age, and so we're living in this period. It's not necessarily literally 1,000 years. It's just be like me saying, yeah, like 1,000,000 years from now. It's just saying it's a long period of time. Or it's exaggeration in the sense like, the old song, and I would walk 500 miles. And I'm not literally going to walk 500 miles just to be with you. But it's like I'm walk a long way, okay? I'm willing to go the distance. And so it's kind of, some people would say it's like that. So it's a symbolic 1,000 years, and it's currently happening. We're actually are in the millennial period. And there's other people that are post-millennial. And they believe that we're kind of going to come to this golden age of Christianity, where when Jesus, told us to go and tell the nations and make disciples of all nations, that will come true, and the world will basically become Christian, and we'll kind of have heaven on earth in that sense, because we'll have achieved our goal. The church will be worldwide, and that will be what it is. And then, according to this, Satan, after this 1,000 years, whether it's literal or figurative or symbolic or whatever it may be, he'll be released again. He'll be released again, and basically the story is the same thing happens again. He's released. We don't get a whole lot here. It's a couple sentences. He goes and deceives the nations, and they gather together against Jesus once more, defying him, and then Jesus is like, no, done. So what is this? Is this literal? Is this figurative? Is this symbolic? Like, what's going on? I think it would be helpful to think of, if you remember when we did our Abraham series and we talked about Genesis, and we talked about how chapters 1 through 11 are kind of like the preface, the preamble, the prologue. It's the scroll at the beginning of Star Wars. It's like, we're just giving you these details so that you can know the bigger picture of where we're at in the story before we get to Abraham, because he's the big mile marker, if you will. And this is kind of the same thing, a little bit maybe on the other end. Because if you remember the story in the preface, if you will, of the Bible, the first 11 chapters of Noah. Like, what's the point of the story of Noah? And I kind of summarize the point of Noah being like, okay, things got pretty bad. And so the question is, well, what would happen if we just cleaned house and we got rid of all the horrible, evil, sinful people that are anti-God, and we just start all over again? Creation 2.0. We're going to start with Noah, because he's the one righteous guy, the one holy guy around here in his family. And so everybody else can be wiped out. We're going to start all over with Noah. And if you know the story, what happens? The same thing. It just repeats itself. It would be like the internet. So if you have the internet and it's like been corrupted and there's all these spyware and all these different things going on and viruses and all that, and you're like, okay, let's just start over again. We're going to 2.0 this thing, and we're going to start fresh. How long before there's another scam or there's another whatever on your computer, all that junk? Like, how long is it going to take? Okay, let's just start over again, 3.0. Clean off the whole thing, start all over again. Like, there's something wrong, right? And that's kind of the whole point of Noah. And I believe, my theory would be that's the same thing that we're seeing here being revealed and uncovered, is even if Jesus literally reigned here on planet Earth for 1,000 years, and everybody got to saw him physically. You could go, high five Jesus. You could go, hang out with Jesus. If he was physically reigning on planet Earth, Satan, if he was released again, people would literally turn their backs on God again. And so that to me is kind of the greater, again, Revelation is not meant to be a photograph, a detailed, roadmap. It's meant to show impression. The French impressionist painting thing I've been trying to get across this entire series is like, what's the impression being painted? And I believe the impression being painted is that there's something wrong with us at our core, that we naturally want to rebel against God. We want to be God. We want to defy him. We want to do our own thing. And so that's just part of our nature, and it's being revealed again here one more time, just so you guys understand why God must judge and why God must get rid of sin completely and eradicate it from planet Earth and start fresh again with a new heaven and a new earth where those things do not exist, is because there's something seriously wrong with us. Something seriously wrong with us. And so when it comes to the rapture, when it comes to the millennium, I hope it's not something that we just divide over and just disputable matters that we just quarrel over. I hope that we can just say, yeah, maybe it's this and maybe it's that, but at the end of the day, we don't know. But that's not what God is trying to reveal to us in the book of Revelation. What he's trying to reveal to us is that we do have a hope. We have a hope that goes beyond anything that can happen to us in this life. whether we escape it or whether we have to live through it. Because I don't know if you realize this, but the first century believers, they didn't get a rapture. They didn't get withdrawn. They had to go through the trial and the trouble. And the believers in the 3rd or 4th or 5th or 10th or 15th or 16th or 18th or 19th, 20th century, nobody got a free pass. In this world, as Jesus told us in John 6, it's like, in this world you will have trouble. You will have tribulation, but take heart because I have overcome. I have overcome this world. And I am making a way for you to be with me. But it doesn't mean that you're getting a free pass, that you won't have to go through some difficulty. And I think the problem is if we preach rapture, and that's the only thing we talk about, and we preach deliverance in the sense like we never have to go through the fire, we never have to go through any trouble, and we never have to go through any trials or difficulty, then we won't be prepared for it. And the whole point of Revelation is saying, prepare for it, endure through it, and if you are victorious in the end and you overcome because I have overcome, then you have nothing to worry about. And that's why you can have peace, and that's why you can have confidence, and that's why you can have assurance. Even if it is the end of the world as we know it, I'm fine, I'm good. I know where I'm going. I know my king, he's going to come, he's going to take me to be with him. At the trumpet call, my groom is coming back for me, his bride, and I want to prepare myself for him because I'm going to live with him for eternity. He's preparing a place for me. And so I have hope and I have confidence, I have assurance on the other side of whatever may happen in my lifetime. The good, the bad, the ugly, the highs and the lows, the valleys and the mountain peaks. I can be okay. I can be okay. And I think that's why it's so important for us to understand the book of Revelation and what Revelation is truly trying to reveal to us, because that's what it's trying to reveal. It's not trying to give us all the details of the end times. It's trying to give us the details saying, this is what you need to know. You need to know that in the end, Jesus is victorious. Jesus is triumphant. And if you're with Jesus and you have put your hope, faith, trust in him, then you're okay. You're okay. We talked about, is the 1,000 years, is it symbolic or is it literal? And, Psalms, I feel like a good assignment for you would be to go back and just read through the Psalms that you're going to see over and over again in the Psalms. It's cries for justice, for God to judge those who are evil, him telling us to endure. He's the rock. He's our refuge. He's our fortress, over and over and over again. And one of the things it says in Psalm chapter 90, verse 4, 1,000 years in your sight are like a day that has just gone by, or like a watch in the night. It's like, I don't know. It's like for you, 1,000 days is like not even a watch of the night. It's like a few hours, and it's like it's different for you. Your ways are different than our ways. And then he says something like this in the same chapter. Read it later on. Our days may come to 70 years or 80 if our strength endures, hypomenos in that sense. Yet the best of them, there's still trouble and there's sorrow, and we quickly pass and we fly away. Whether that's the rapture or I fly away, oh Lord, right? It's like I fly away and I'm going to be with you. I'm not going to be here anymore. I'll be with you. Then in verse 11, if only we knew the power of your anger. Your wrath is as great as the fear that is your due. Verse 12, I probably said this before. It says, teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. I just think the whole point of Revelation, the whole point of the Bible is teach us to number our days. If we get 70, then we're lucky. If we get 80, wow, you really endured, right? But what do we do with the days that we have? Are we going to live in fear and anxiety and paranoia? Or are we going to live with this peace and this confidence and this assurance because we have been given a glimpse of the future, and the future is good for us? Because we will be with him forever. It's not so great for those who turn against God, as you're going to read in Revelation chapter 20, because they will experience the second death, which is spiritual death, separation from the giver of life, separation from life. And they'll be tormented, not necessarily tormented by God, but be tormented in the sense like regret, I think. Tortured, like, oh, I chose poorly, and now I'm just in this state forever and ever and ever with regret and sorrow and pain and suffering. I can't get in there. Right? And that will not be us. That will not be us. And so put your hope and put your faith and put your confidence in what God has revealed to us, that we have a hope and assurance and a peace that goes beyond any trial and any tribulation. And so put our hope in God. So I hope as you guys wrap up and you kind of do an overview of this whole series, that's the conclusion that you reach. So thanks for enduring. Thanks for putting up with another long message here. But hopefully it's been something that will spur you on and help you to dive into a deeper, more vibrant relationship with Jesus.